My name is Dave Johnson. I am the development director at Bethesda Children's Home, and I've been there for 13 years. Bethesda currently is a residential treatment facility for at-risk youth. Well, Bethesda was established in 1919 through the generosity of a gentleman by the name of Mr. William S. Wise. He was a Sagertown resident, and he was an entrepreneur. He was involved in 4-H. He was involved in a lot of businesses. He was a farmer. He was well known throughout the state of Pennsylvania. He was involved in politics, and yet he didn't have any children or family of his own. And so he had this farm. It was 130 acres of property just north of Meadville. When he got to a point where he couldn't maintain the farm, he donated the property to what was then the Pittsburgh Synod of the Lutheran Church to establish an orphanage in Crawford County, Meadville, back in 1919. And the condition was that the Synod, the Pittsburgh Synod of the Lutheran Church, had to do that within 5 years. And they indeed established an orphanage right here in Meadville. Orphanages back in the day were primarily places where families could take their kids if there was tragedy or something of a situation going on within the home. There's evidence even today of some of the families that were dropped off at Bethesda that come back to visit Bethesda, and there might be 5, 6, 7 of them, and typically they're in their 80s or 90s, and it's kind of interesting to hear some of the stories. The one that comes to my mind is the Estes family. There were, I think, 7 of those folks that were all at Bethesda, sisters and brothers, and they have all been back to Bethesda at one time. In fact, the Meadville Tribune did a story on the whole family, how they sort of reunited back at Bethesda because they're all scattered throughout the country. But like I said, many of them are in their 80s and 90s now, and several of them have passed away since then. But they were all here together. I think there were 3 sisters and 3 or 4 brothers that were here at Bethesda. So that's one sort of interesting story. Kids would come to live with Bethesda. They worked the farm. They helped to sustain the organization. They weren't thought of primarily as kids with mental health issues back then. They were just kids that didn't have a place to go. The orphans that I described really could have and indeed lived at Bethesda for 18 years. Some of them were dropped off as babies, and they left when they graduated from high school. There's a gentleman that some folks might remember. His name was Don Stewart. He went to Sagertown High School. He was a basketball standout at Sagertown. He's now in his 70s. He lived here literally at Bethesda for 18 years. I grew up in Warren, so Meadville to me is very similar to Warren in that it's a small town, small city, but yet it has a lot to offer. Everybody knows your name, just like the song on Cheers. It's a small knit community, family oriented, where people are friendly, and it's just a nice place to live. It's a nice place to grow up. It's a nice place to work, and that's what I like about Meadville.